tonight we're going to talk about our creative process, how we come up with our ideas. But I think before we do that, I think you all need to know about the history of the Onion. Can we get the first?
He's directing me now.
Sorry. So a lot of people are not aware that the Onion has a very rich history that begins all the way in 1765.
It was founded by Friedrich Siegfried, who was a Prussian tuber farmer. He traded a sack of yams for a printing press and began the Mercantile Onion, which was named after the only 3 words he knew in English.
Yeah.
This is the first issue.
Now, a lot of people aren't aware, but in 1783, there was the great journalism schism in which the Mercantile went off to be its own newspaper and the Onion became its own newspaper. Reporting news of the day, here we have 40,000 pounds of slave have been lost at sea. It's a very important commodity back then.
This is T. Herman Zwiebel. He is the publisher and former editor-in-chief of The Onion. His current whereabouts are unknown.
Well, actually, he is currently in space, living in an iron lung, being chased by his arch nemesis, Mr. Tin. A lot of people don't know that. And this isn't his born and death date. He's still alive.
This is purely his editorship.
This is editorship, 105 years.
Earthquake marks the least gay day in San Francisco history. Not sure why you're laughing. It's sort of a tragic event. But.
So we just want to go through first. We just want to go through the 20th century a little bit, so you understand that the Onion has always been there. The Onion has always been there, chronicling America.
World's largest metaphor hits iceberg. This, of course, is when World War II broke out.
Headline continued on page 2. Kennedy slain by CIA, Mafia, Castro, LBJ, Teamsters, Freemasons. President shot 129 times
from 43
different angles.
Obviously a very sad day for America, but luckily kind of an open and shut case.
Yeah. Holy shit, man walks on fucking moon.
Historic event, obviously. Reported on with eloquence and grace, I think.
Right, you did a very good job.
Kind of makes a paper like the New York Times seem like a miserable piece of garbage.
Yeah. We were the only newspaper to cover this event.
You know the New York Times uses slave labor to run their printing press?
They
you know
use
that?
slave labor?
Slave labor in the 21st century.
A lot of little slaves running
Who here
around.
thinks the New York Times is a bad newspaper written by bad people? Right? Well,
there
you're
you
a
go.
disgrace. Reagan may have been elected, doesn't recall.
Drugs win drug war?
And of course, the September 11th issue that we did. Holy fucking shit, attack on America.
My personal favorite in this one is not knowing what else to do, a woman bakes American flag cake. Sort of paints the overall helplessness of the situation. Also, Jerry Falwell, is that guy dick or what?
This is the issue we did.
The election?
So Obama was elected president.
Now, a lot of
Now settle down. Now settle down.
a lot of news gathering institutions just report on the news. But the Onion was ready in case there was another outcome
We had
for the election.
whole issue mocked up in case
Nation
McCain
elects first ever 44th white president.
was elected.
Nation not yet shitty enough to make social progress. Palin abandons Russia watching Post. We also had McCain spotted getting hammered at local VFW. I don't think that was on.
We did. So now I think we want to give a kind of a glimpse into how we put a story together and how we kind of put our comedy together. We're going to admit that we're comedians now.
Except this is our staff.
It's the Onion staff. It's a six-person staff consisting of men aged 42 to 55.
All of them are
That
named
is us
Eric.
with our sales awards.
So I guess for a lot of people, the headline is the most important part of what we do. It's the big joke right up top. And we want to take you through the evolution of something. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. If you don't read the paper, I don't care.
He cares a lot.
Yeah, I care. The headline that ultimately, it was no one murdered because of this image.
I don't know if anyone saw this. It was probably about 3-4 weeks ago.
And it was a comment on depicting Muhammad. So, because of the stuff happening in Libya.
There have been things that we had tried to do on that topic before.
Right.
We had written an op-ed that was a guy.
Do you want to see any? I got some naked pictures of Muhammad.
Anyone want to see any naked pictures of Muhammad?
Which we never ran. Thank God.
Did it go over very well?
Yeah. So there's a headline list. People come in with their headline lists, and they pitch their headlines.
We have staff writers, obviously, who write headlines. We also have freelancers and contributors who write headlines. They're all kind of compiled. We read them in the room.
And if they get voted, if they get enough votes, if people say, sure, okay. If 2 people do that, they get highlighted. It's not a...
Once it's highlighted, then it goes to a kind of short list.
Which is this.
Which is this. This is just a piece of a short list. It's usually in the neighborhood of maybe 100 to 150 long.
So
we kind of group topical headlines first. So these are things that we know would have to kind of run within the day or within the week. And we go through these.
And to look at number 2, it was no one murdered following this depiction of Christ. It was picture of Christ's head in between 2 breasts. That's what the original idea was going to be if it ran. And then, well, I think there's a slide. So
yeah,
these
are the ones
selected.
We knew we liked these. Nib means news and brief, which is sort of like a short news article, usually about 200 to 300 words.
Right.
Which is different from a kind of a full story, which is in the neighborhood of 600 to 800 words.
So the interesting thing, so that was actually, number 2 was actually my headline. And Will said that he did not want to do a joke that came out in support of Christians, right?
Well, I didn't want a joke that necessarily came out in support of one religion being better than the other,
Right.
because I think that our voice should typically be more that they're all a little bit absurd.
Right.
And so we kind of had banding around ideas of different things that Christ could be doing that were kind of funny.
And
but
Will had an idea that it was Christ on the cross and he was giving hand jobs to 2 guys.
also
next
on
to
crosses adjacent.
Also,
But ultimately, kind of just felt like something about the joke didn't really sit right to me. So, what's this?
So if you click to the next thing, so
Right.
this is kind of just notes that somebody's taking in the room as we're talking about this joke.
We usually have an intern typing up all the jokes that we're like kind of throwing out in the room once we've picked a headline that we
And
like.
I like to say this, but hate to say this, but in this particular way, Christianity wins. Christianity is, and somebody, I think it was me, suggested, well, we could put to hide that, or to not hide it, but we could say that Christianity is also responsible for the deaths of thousands and thousands of people in the closer of the News and Brief, to sort of, also say that Christianity doesn't win. And then what happened was,
ultimately, we decided that instead of making it focus on Christ, we could just say no one murdered following this image, which would just be a variety of deities and some sort of
orgy.
bacchanalian orgy.
So, but in which Muhammad was not pictured.
Right.
But this happened because we went to our graphics guy and we said, what do you think? What could you do? What is your idea? And he actually came up with the idea to do. He said I could do a beautiful cartoon with all the deities except for Muhammad. And
Just doing horrible things. And then someone wrote this email response saying that following calls for a verb phrase like publication of this image. Personally, I'd replace following with because of. This just goes to show, we just include this to show that we really are kind of obsessive about fine-tuning every beat and every word of a headline. And so I had to send this email out to everyone that we changed it, no one murdered because of this image.
And And then, so I would be interested in seeing that.
So then people start kind of like adding new ideas once they're aware of the concept.
This is the Indian god Ganesha. He's a four-armed elephant guy.
And then myself and Seth will kind of talk to the graphics guys to get them started.
Isn't it? So as you can see, the idea is coming together.
So then a writer writes a draft, they email it in.
And one reason I think Will really wanted it, Will wanted it to be an image, and I thought it would be a cool thing to do. Sometimes we just do an image with a headline, and those are very effective. But I thought it would be a cool thing to do to dryly just write what was happening in the image, and dryly write the sex acts in news voice.
And it's without quotes, it's purely news voice.
Yeah. So the graphic.
So this is sort of an initial draft. He usually, one of our graphics guys, who's a very good illustrator, he will usually do a brief kind of mock-up, whether it's a Photoshop or whether it's an illustration. He'll do something that's kind of outlines is basically what he wants to be going for.
So as you can see, there's Jesus Christ, there's Buddha, there's Ganesha, there's Moses, and it's not exactly clear who everyone is, and we really wanted to make sure everyone could tell who everyone was.
Who's fingering whose asshole, that
Right.
kind of.
And who wasn't present, and who wasn't present. That was also, wanted that to be clear.
So this was just another version that he did. I think we liked the high five element.
The high five stayed. The high five was great.
And now it's no longer fingering, but fisting an asshole. And
now
this
it's
is
starting to
getting
come together.
closer to what we wanted. I made the suggestion because Moses, it wasn't quite clear who Moses was in previous graphics, so I just said we'll have him holding the commandments. And have the tattoo on him, which is also offensive, obviously.
And we also want to make sure everyone's having a great time,
Yeah.
right?
Even at this stage without color, it's a little bit hard to tell who's doing what to whom and who, what's happening exactly.
So we were told to blur it out.
Not our choice, but
We blurred it out.
But now it's pretty clear who's who, I think.
Christ has a cross on him. He also has the thorns and the gash there. And Muhammad is not present. So, in fact, no one is murdered because of that image, because there is no depiction of Muhammad.
And this all went up, within, 24 hours. I mean, it was all done pretty quickly in response to the actual news story.
And at this point, I will say we were very excited to release it. And when it went out, the number of people on our website went from about 5,000 to 25,000. It was insane. We'd never seen anything like that before.
Usually, we'll after we put the story up on the website, we'll also then promote it on Facebook and on Twitter. And the reaction from this was we got this letter, kind of a block delete publication letter from somewhere in Mumbai saying that it needed to be taken down because of the content was offensive. And then Facebook made us sort of take down the image because it violated their terms of use. So that was one thing. That was just the evolution of one story. I want to talk a little bit about stories that don't make the cut, which is not something we talk about usually often, but this is something we wanted to do. Defeated by a World Airman Returns.
This is a headline we wanted to do.
We do a series of very sort of area man stories, we call them, and they usually involve someone who is very schlubby, very depressed,
right.
Very beaten down by the world. And so this seemed like kind of a natural evolution for that character. He's just going to crawl
Take
back
solace in his mother's uterus once again. And we had found out that we're very cognizant of not trying to do what other comedy organizations have done. I mean, you've heard like The Simpsons did it, that type of stuff. We had found out that another show had done this, a very similar type of joke, a guy back in his mother's uterus, so we decided to cut it. And it was very deflating, because we were very excited to do it.
But ultimately, I think we all agreed it's good.
Why
that
do
we
it
did
if
We're
somebody
pretty
else has done it?
fanatical about not repeating what other people have done and also not repeating ourselves. And this gets to the second point. Everest was so cold they started hallucinating, recalls climber currently hallucinating on Everest, which is very similar to a story that we did before. Kidnapped boy found safe, imagines kidnapped boy. Well.
It's not like it's not true. If you're kidnapped, you want to get back, right?
So yeah, this continues to be up on our backlog board, the Everest headline, because we really like it. I actually think it could be funnier written out than even this one, but ultimately there's someone in the room who's like, we can't do it. We already did the exact same switch.
Construction.
Yeah.
So.
New U-Haul Airlines allows customers to rent out cargo planes.
So this was written out, ready to go, and then somebody brought up that in 2008 we did this.
U-Haul announced disclosure of aircraft division.
So we did not run it.
So it's always kind of fun to show people how our Photoshops evolve, because we have a very talented graphics team that puts these together. They'll start with here's the headline, Florida to experiment with new 600-lever voting machine. So they'll start with something that they find usually in stock and then just sort of play with it. And it takes a very, very long time, and it's very intricate, and they work very long hours.
The red button right there is just if you want to vote straight ticket Republican.
Just press the button if you want to do Republican. Gay Marine beaten to pulp to fire up RNC crowd. This is something we did for the convention. So those are actually some people who work at our office. They have our graphics department has a whole bunch of costumes. It's like an old Hollywood film set where there's just like a Civil War costume and a Marine costume, and that eventually gets turned into this. They do head swaps. George W. Bush returns to America after spending 4 years in Himalayas. And this was for the Democratic National Convention, which really, we just took the same photo and just did slight little tweaks, which actually news organizations have done with photos of in the past, but we decided to make him as evil as possible. We were just sort of writing out the far-right fantasy in that one. And Paul Ryan knocked over by pack of rambunctious Romney boys.
It's just sort of fun to imagine the Romney boys as being this pack of dogs.
Pack of dogs.
Bunch of good boys.
We are apparently out of time.
And we're done.
And you are done. Okay. There you go.
Thank you.